Hello, everyone. We welcome you to the Searching on the Path of Independence series, a weekly program usually conducted in the Uyghur language focused on providing answers to important questions from the global East Turkestani diaspora as they continue their struggle to restore East Turkestan's independence. This is the first English language interview that we are conducting, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Ben Lowsen, to answer some questions raised by the East Turkestani diaspora community regarding our signature campaign to urge the U.S. Congress to recognize East Turkestan as an occupied country. Mr. Ben Lowsen is an American sinologist and strategist focusing on Chinese political and security affairs. Until very recently, he worked as a China advisor for the U.S. Air Force's Checkmate office. He previously served as an Asia advisor for the U.S. Navy and was in the U.S. Army as a field artillery officer and China specialist. He completed tours of duty in Germany, Korea, Qatar, the Pentagon, and 2 tours in China, serving as assistant U.S. Army attaché in Beijing from 2013 to 2016. He visited East Turkestan twice, and Mr. Lowsen's experience includes policy and strategy coordination, military-to-military engagement, intelligence production and analysis, and bilateral negotiation. Mr. Lowsen, thank you for taking your time to join us today for this program.
Thanks for having me, Sal. Mr. Huda.
As you know, since last week, we have been gathering signatures from the East Turkestani diaspora organizations for a joint letter to the U.S. Congress urging them to address China's ongoing campaign of colonization, genocide, and occupation in East Turkestan. Our key requests have included recognizing East Turkestan as an occupied country, similar to Tibet, to challenge China's illegitimate occupation, and to upgrading the Uyghur Policy Act to the East Turkestan Policy Act to encompass all of East Turkestan and its people, as well as appointing a special coordinator for East Turkestani issues within the U.S. State Department to focus on the humanitarian crisis and counter China's malign activities, and supporting East Turkestan's pursuit of justice through the International Criminal Court or the International Court of Justice to hold China and the Chinese officials accountable for its crimes. And lastly, to resist China's attempts to erase East Turkestan by using the correct name for our homeland, East Turkestan, in official discourse. To date, over 60 Uyghur and other East Turkestani organizations worldwide have already signed on to this letter. Yet there are some Uyghur human rights groups and religious organizations who have oddly been opposing these efforts, labeling them as unrealistic at the very least, and sowing doubt within our diaspora. So our first question is, Mr. Lowsen, how do you assess the feasibility and importance of urging the U.S. Congress to recognize East Turkestan as an occupied country, and what impact could such recognition have on our cause?
Thanks, Sully. That's a good question. Number one, I think it's entirely feasible, and it would have an extremely good effect on the cause of East Turkestan independence. The United States, of course, when we're all Americans here, is a free and independent country. We have every right to state our mind on what we believe is true. And what is true is that East Turkestan was an independent country twice. It was always an independent people even before that. And so it was conquered by China in 1949. There's no doubt, by the Chinese Communist Party. And so congressional recognition of this, or I should say re-recognition, since Congress has already recognized this in 1959, it's a very good measure that we can use to show support for the people under threat in China's concentration camps. So I think recognition in some would be a great vindication of the cause of East Turkestan, because clearly simply asking China to respect people's human rights has not worked.
Thank you. And then there are some human rights activists who argue that the U.S. approach to Taiwan and the U.S. affirmation of the One China policy compels the U.S. to uphold China's so-called territorial integrity and sovereignty, and therefore the U.S. Congress won't recognize East Turkestan as an occupied country. How do you view this?
Well, honestly, I think they need to look at the basis of the U.S.'s One China policy, going back to the 3 communiques, the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979, and President Reagan's 6 assurances. So yeah, we say there's one China, But frankly, if you think that means that China gets to conquer other countries, whether it's Taiwan or East Turkestan, then you haven't understood the policy, because it doesn't. And we never said anything to the effect that it would. The United States can easily recognize one China and for East Turkestan independently, because they're two different countries, and that's just the bottom line.
Thank you. And throughout the years, you have been a steadfast supporter, offering your time and expertise to our cause. Based on your extensive experience and engagement, do you believe in the possibility of restoring East Turkestan's independence? And what makes you optimistic or skeptical?
I believe it is absolutely possible. And I'm not going to gild the lily here. It's going to be difficult. It's like, to use an analogy, it's like going into Mordor, trying to free the people of East Turkestan. But, in dark times, it's not the first time that this has happened. In 1945, nobody would have thought Jews could establish their own state 3 years later. In 2022, the very smartest people in our government were saying Ukraine would fall within a matter of weeks. And you know what? They were all wrong. And anybody who says that independence for East Turkestan is impossible is simply wrong. There's a power building in China's concentration camps, and its slave factories. And that power, if we ever get the chance to let it out, it will make East Turkestan independent. And furthermore, let me just add that this is very much in America's interest, because an independent East Turkestan, in coordination with the other powers of Central Asia, including Mongolia and Tibet and the Five Stands, it would be a strategic counterweight of inestimable value, holding down both China and Russia and keeping them from doing the things that they're trying to do now. So that's why I think it's very much in our interest to explore the possibility of East Turkestan independence.
Thank you. And question four, from your perspective, what steps should the East Turkestani people and organizations undertake to advance our cause for independence? And are there any particular expectations from the U.S. government regarding the role and actions of East Turkestani and Uyghur organizations in exile?
I think the independence-minded organizations in exile are going to be the core and the cadre of the East Turkestan independence movement. I'll tell you, I think, it's very important for you to get ready, this core of organizations. And that's what my best advice now, because the more ready we are, and the more poorly that China does, and we see Xi Jinping doing many things very poorly right now, the greater our chances become. Because if we're very lucky, you are actually going to get the chance for independence, but you probably won't get it more than once. So it behooves us all now to get ready and support those organizations that are doing the right thing. I know the U.S. can be very slow to listen. It's hard for us to hear. There aren't that many Uyghurs and East Turkestanis in our country, unfortunately. And so we are finally starting to listen, and Congress and the American people are finally starting to understand the problem. So I hope you will be ready, and I hope we are actually working now to get more Uyghurs and East Turkestanis out from under the grasp of the Chinese Communist Party, because they are the most powerful, like Sayragul Sapayev. They're the most powerful supporters of East Turkestan independence. So the more we get out, the better off we will be when that chance comes.
Thank you. And in light of the escalating tensions between the U.S. and China, how do you view the East Turkestan issue within this broader geopolitical context? And how could these tensions potentially affect our aspirations for independence?
As I said, I think China is in trouble. Maybe that it gets itself out of this trouble. I don't know, but it may not be. Xi Jinping is doing a very bad job there. I have to say, he set up concentration camps, slave labor camps. He's using torture. He's taking children away from families, from the East Turkestanis. All of this is really intolerable to people. And just let me use this opportunity to call out our business community. 20 years ago, I wouldn't have said anything about East Turkestan independence, to be honest, because probably I didn't understand it. And frankly, there wasn't the great tragedy that Xi Jinping is inflicting right now. But since that time, Xi Jinping has come to power, and he has inflicted this. And he's done so with a lot of support from our free business communities, from Europe, from the United States, Canada, Japan, and other business communities, still doing their business in China and sending money, a lot of money, to the Chinese Communist Party, which it is using to build up their military, threaten us geopolitically, and also even more, spending even more to hold its own people down. And that includes holding the people of East Turkestan down in this terrible condition in which he's put them. And so I'd like to call out the business community and ask them to stop doing that. Now, they are finally starting to de-risk and starting to listen and think about putting their investments elsewhere. And that's the right idea. And they need to do it faster. But there's still too much money going to China from the Pfizers, from Tesla, Apple. So we really, in the Congress, from the congressional side, U.S. Congress, need to start looking at ways to help them make the right decision, because they're not making it fast enough. And so I think as we geopolitically and economically cut off the People's Republic of China, I think its situation will get worse, frankly, even though it's striving for self-sufficiency. And that being the case, I hope that we do get our chance to see your people free.
Thank you. And considering China's tactics to divide East Turkestani groups and prevent the internationalization of the East Turkestan issue, as outlined in the CCP political Politburo's top secret document number 7 from 1996, how can Uyghurs and other East Turkestanis in the diaspora who are facing threats, who are facing intimidation, who are being silenced, and even blackmailed and manipulated, effectively seek protection from the U.S. or other Western governments? And additionally, how can pro-independence advocates unify our efforts and counteract these, Chinese government's malign strategies to strengthen our collective voice for independence?
Well, I think it's very important to remember among the diaspora community that the People's Republic of China agents are breaking the laws in our countries, specifically in the United States. They are operating in our country, they're not reporting correctly, and they're simply harassing the Uyghur and East Turkestani community without check right now. But that's changing because, as we just learned, the FBI and the National Counterintelligence and Security Center are calling out on the diaspora community to report incidents of harassment and attempted recruitment, because this is illegal and this cannot go on in our country, and we've let it go on for far too long. So I'm very happy to see that we're doing more to stop this crime that the CCP is committing. It's not right, and frankly, there's already enough of a barrier between the diaspora community and the rest of America because of language and other barriers. It makes it hard. And I think people have felt isolated where they're at and afraid to report. They didn't know how to report. Well, hopefully that is gone for good. They should be reporting incidences of harassment and recruitment attempts to the FBI and the National CI and Security Center. More than that, I would point out that the House has passed the Uyghur Policy Act. Now, it still needs to go through the Senate, but we're hoping for that soon and for the president to sign off on it. The Uyghur Policy Act is now setting up a special coordinator for Uyghur affairs. Now, really, it should be a special coordinator for East Turkestan affairs, but I think the level of awareness in the Congress is not high enough yet. So we'll take the Uyghur special coordinator for now, and that will be a focal point to help the FBI and other government agencies to apply the correct resources to stop the crime that the CCP is outrageously committing in our own country. So hopefully help is on the way. And I think that will help to build solidarity among the movement. And it'll stop the CCP malign influence from preventing Uyghurs and East Turkestanis from supporting independence. So we're looking forward to good things on that front.
Thank you. And lastly, what can ordinary Americans do to help the East Turkestani people in their struggle?
Absolutely. I think number one is to be aware that China is committing genocide. Don't forget it. You've learned about the Uyghurs over the last 5 years. Now you need to know for the American people that the Uyghurs are a nation unto themselves, along with the rest of the other Turkic nationalities of East Turkestan. They were a nation called the Republic of East Turkestan twice, and it was conquered by the Chinese Communist Party in 1949. And hopefully they will be a nation again, because they're living in intolerable circumstances. And if we ever give them the chance, and we're hoping we will soon, they will fight and they will gain their independence, and they will be a democratic and prosperous ally of the United States in a critical strategic portion of the world. And for all of your East Turkestani and Uyghur watchers and listeners, I hope you are looking and you're asking yourself, who is fighting for you? who is fighting for your families in East Turkestan. And I hope you see that it is the East Turkestan government in exile. Because I've looked for a long time and I've tried to find a reason that they're not honest, and I have not found it. They are honest. Every Uyghur outside of the organization and person that I talk to, they say these folks are honest. And so ask who is fighting for you and support them.
Thank you. And thank you again for taking your time to join us today for this program. And we hope that our watchers and listeners can benefit from this. And we hope that the Uyghur community who are facing these issues, that all of these questions that Mr. Lowsen has answered will help address the doubts that are being spread by certain instigators. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hudayar.